Hello and welcome back. I'm Colton from Ankeny Van Builds, and if you remember from last week, we built our lower cabinet frames. So this week we're going to build all of the drawer boxes, install the drawer slides, make the drawer faces, the handles, all of that. And if you're newly subscribed here, I want to say welcome and thank you for subscribing. And with that out of the way, let's go ahead and start this week's video. So what I'm doing now, and I kind of explained it last week's video, is I use 3/4 inch plywood for the walls and then 1.5 inches for the face frame. So with that in the way, you wouldn't be able to use these drawer slides because they would just hit up against this face frame. So what I'm doing is I'm putting 3/4 inch plywood onto the walls. That way I can put the drawer slides up to it, and that makes it nice and flush so that we can have these drawer slides come out and not catch onto the face frame. And one tip that I always do is I find the measurement that I need. I'll cut a scrap piece of plywood and I'll use those as spacers. That way I'll use it on this side and I'll use the same blocks on the other, making sure that both of them are the exact same distance off the ground and that it's nice and even. And the way I attach these mounts is I put a bunch of wood glue on the back side of it and I punch it in with 1-inch nails. That way it's not blowing out of the back side. And once the glue dries, it'll be super strong and it won't go anywhere. So with all those horizontal pieces in to get the drawer slides nice and flush up with the face frame, now it's time to start making the actual drawer boxes themselves. So in order to get the right width, we got to take into account the width of these drawer slides. So I know that the width of each cabinet is 17 7/8 inches wide. Now when you take these two into account, I measured them, both of them combined is exactly 1 inch. So I'll make my drawer boxes 16 7/8 inches. Do not forget this step. So unfortunately, I don't have enough plywood to finish all these boxes. I am one side piece away from having that done, but you know, it is what it is. I'm gonna go ahead and start putting the 3 boxes that I have together. I'll have to wait on that 4th one, but here's what I'm gonna do for this. So right now, this is what one drawer box is gonna look like, and this being the face of it. To get a better joint here, I'm gonna notch out the face of this and then attach it. That way that'll prevent it from sliding or warping or coming apart in the future. So I'm gonna go ahead and do what's called a dado. So notch this out about 3/4 of an inch in and halfway up on this plywood. And I'll do that for both sides on the front and the back. So here's how I get my dados cut. So I set the fence right at 3/4 of an inch so that the outside of this tooth right here is right at that 3/4. I have this cross cut sled. Most table saws should come with one of these. If you don't have it, it's not the end of the world, but this just makes it a lot easier. So what I do is I'll make my first pass right at the 3/4, then I'll slide it over just a notch, run it through again, and I'll continue that until I can run it back and forth with nothing catching on the sides. So that's what it should look like once it's all said and done. So now it's tucked right up in there in that notch. It helps strengthen these drawer boxes, and I think it all looks pretty good. Now, before anybody says anything, I know that they make specific dado blades for that purpose alone. I just don't have any. It would have made that process go a lot quicker, but it is what it is. Okay, so now I'm in the process of installing these drawer slides, and I want to show you exactly how I'm doing that. So I already got one of them in. It's working pretty good, and I want to show you a little trick that I use. So I'm all about using these spacer blocks to get the spacing exactly right on both the front and the back. But what I'm doing here is, without this shim, the lip wasn't exactly flush, and every time I would try to slide this out, it would rub against the face frame. So what I do is I have these wooden shims, and I back these screws in here out just a little bit so that I can get this in here, and I push the shim in just far enough to where it's past this lip, and then that's what allows it to go in and out nice and smooth. Okay, check it out. All the drawer boxes are made. The slides are in. They all work great, nice and smooth. Super happy with how they turned out. They have this spring load to them so that it doesn't just come flying open. You can see it. Let's get a little closer. So you can see it. You try to pull it out, it'll come out a little bit, but then it goes right back in. So yeah, so that spring load will help prevent the drawer slides from just sliding open right when you're making turns and stuff in the van. I will also have little RV latches similar to the ones I have in the upper cabinets. I'll have those on these drawer boxes as well. But I think I'm gonna call it a day here. Tomorrow I'll come back and make the drawer faces, and then probably start putting clear coats, maybe start painting. I don't know, that might be a little ambitious, but anyways, making progress. See you guys tomorrow. Okay, we're back, and today's gonna be devoted strictly to making the shaker cabinet style drawer faces, which I'll leave a link up top on how to do that. I'm not gonna explain how to do it on this video because I just did that last week. So I'm just gonna start the time lapse and get these done. basically the only difference that I did on these shaker cabinet doors is rather than having that groove go down right down the middle and putting that 1/4 inch plywood in it, I cut a notch along the back edge. Let me drop this out. So I cut a notch along this back edge and I filled in the remainder of it right here because it went all the way through, because at the top I don't want to be able to see a hole or have to try to fill that in with wood filler. So I got more 1/4 inch plywood, filled that part in, but now all I do is I insert this part right here, and then on the front it looks just like that. Now the reason I did that is because on the drawer faces they'll be flush with the front of the cabinet, and if I had this middle piece on the center of this 3/4 inch plywood, that would leave a gap for where I'm trying to install it and it might bend the middle. So I wanted this part on the back to be flush with the back of the cabinet face. I think that made sense. So there they are. All the face frames are attached, and real quickly I just want to go over how I attached them. So to get the spacing right, I knew I wanted a 1/2 inch in between each face vertically. So I would get my combo square, I would set it to 1/2 inch. So when I would put it up against the face frame, it would go 1/2 inch up from the top, 1/2 inch down from the bottom, and that would leave a 1/2 inch gap in between. So you can see right there, that's a 1/2 inch up. I have another one on the bottom, and that's what I would line it up with, and I would get a clamp horizontally and put those there. I also did the same thing on the sides. I wanted a 1/4 inch overhang on the sides of these, and the reason for that is when I went to install the faces, I wanted there to be enough of this side frame at the 3/4 inch to be able to drive one of these 1/4 inch and a 1/4 screws, so that it will go through the drawer box itself and then the face frame itself, making sure that it's in there nice and snug and nice and strong. And then once I got them in, I made sure that the sides lined up and that there was a true 1/2 inch between each one. And then I got this one to line up with the bottom of the cabinet. So all in all, I think it looks fantastic. Now it's just down to sanding it, putting a clear coat. I plan on putting a clear coat in some of the, and what's called this paste wax. Here, let me show you that. So this finishing wax is what I plan on putting on the outside of all these drawer boxes. That'll give them this nice slick and smooth. So that way if it rubs up against something like the drawer slides or the side of the face or anything, it'll be able to rub right against it and not scratch it or hurt it. So I'm gonna use that on the outside, a clear polyurethane on all of the insides, and then I will paint the drawer faces and the outside of the cabinet. So I probably won't bore you with all of those because it's just kind of there's really nothing to it. It just, you sand it down, you paint it, and put it all back together. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that and then install the hardware. So I'll see you guys after that. Okay, so that was quite the process, painting all of those. But take a look at how good this looks. I think that the colors look amazing. Also, these cushions we bought on Cushoni, I believe is the name of the store, online store. But I think that's gonna look great with these wooden countertops. It already looks great with the wooden ceiling and this wooden open shelf. But here's how I attached it to the van itself. So underneath these subway tiles, I have a wooden stud running across horizontally. So I used 1.5 inch screws and I put 6 of them, so it's super strong. And then for these, underneath here, I just screwed them directly into the floor. You can see I have about 5 screws there. And coming over to this side, more screws into the floor here. So these are super sturdy. I also, in the backrest, I'll cover these up with some paint so that they're not as noticeable. I'm gonna go ahead and show you how I put the drawer handles in. Okay, so to install these handles, what I do is I find the exact midpoint of the inside of the face, divide that in half, and when I find that midpoint, because each of these holes are exactly 3 inches apart. I find that midpoint, then I go 1.5 inches one way, 1.5 inches the other. Then I get the midpoint up and down, and on those 2 side marks that I made, I make another mark exactly where the middle is. And then with a drill, I use a 3/16 inch drill bit. I drill a hole straight through the middle, and because these screws aren't quite long enough to go through that 3/4 inch plywood, 3/8 inch drill bit on the back side just to countersink the screw head just enough so that it can reach all the way through. But you got to be really careful not to go too far with it. But anyways, I got one of these handles in already, 3 more on here, and then 1 on the sink cabinet, and then these cabinets are basically done. Now one last thing, just put the cherry on top to finish this up. We got a bottle opener, and we'll put that in, and these cabinets are done. Just like that. So if you guys liked this week's video, make sure you go ahead and let me know by liking the video and subscribing down below. These cabinets were fairly difficult, kind of a time-consuming process. All in all, it took me probably 5 days to start to finish, but I cannot be more happy with how they turned out. And on that, I want to end this video here, and I'll see you guys next week. Thanks, guys.